Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, the motion picture you're about to see contains scenes so terrifying, the public must be given grave warning.
Hello and good evening, and welcome everybody to the I guess it's not Bloody Binge this week. It is Shivers. Welcome to Shivers. I am your host, Stuart Dweller, and joining me, as always lately, Friday.
I'm so happy to be here. I love Shivers. It's one of my favorite shows.
It is. It's a lot of fun for me to do as well because I don't get to talk too much about the paranormal and cryptozoology. I have one friend, and I haven't talked to him in a while because he's not on Facebook anymore. Who is actually an avid Bigfoot hunter that I used to talk to him. I used to talk with him about it a lot, and with him not being on Facebook anymore, it kind of gets a little harder unless he comes and does a talk at a local library. He's even like this guy is they're so big they've even been on like the Travel Channel. I think it was Investigation Discovery or the Discovery Channel in that talking about his encounters with Bigfoot. Oh yeah, it's have you ever heard of a show called Terror in the Woods?
Yes, I watched that with my mother-in-law and father-in-law.
He's in the episode. His name is Mike Feltner, and he's in the episode that they were hunted by Bigfoot.
So cool.
He's part of the Ohio Night Stalkers, and they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. He's a good dude. I've known him for at least 10, 15 years now. He's always wanted me to go Bigfoot hunting with him, but it just never panned out. But welcome everybody to Shivers, and happy pre-Valentine's Day. So this week or this month, I guess we do Shivers once a month. We are going to celebrate Valentine's Day the only way we know how, with some serial killers.
Ooh, I've been looking forward to this.
This will be. I was supposed to do a serial killer episode or a true crime episode back in December, but unfortunately, I just could not find enough information on the case that I wanted to do enough to make a whole show. So I had to skip that one. So I figured we'd do it here because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of serial killing couples out there. And there's also a bunch of Lovers Lane killers. So everything tonight will have to do with either Lovers Lanes, serial killing couples, or some sort of love, Valentine's Day. We gotta do Valentine's Day, right? So we're gonna do that. My original plan this week was not to do news like I normally do. Even for Shivers, we usually do some paranormal news or some stupid news or something like that. But there's so much information this month with this episode that we are actually going. We were going to skip it, but something big dropped today, and I don't know if it's today or a couple of days ago. I know the article I got was put out today, and it kind of fits in with everything that's going on, or that we're going to talk about today. And I don't think Friday has seen this yet.
No.
But Friday, what would you do if I told you that they might have the identity of Jack the Ripper?
That would be something I would have to tell my mother-in-law when we found out. Because she has all the books and the shows.
This is from News Nation, the article I have, but it has also been posted on some other major news sources out there. But where'd it go? I just had it. There it is. So, historian Russell Edwards says he has identified Jack the Ripper, and the person he's basically saying did it is somebody they have suspected for years now, a man by the name of Aaron Kosminski. And he claims that he's identified him as Jack the Ripper through a DNA match of a shawl that was found at the scene of one of the murders. Kosminski was a Polish immigrant who came to Whitechapel, England in 1881 alongside his brother, and he became a barber once in the British capital. Edwards told Today Show Australia that he came to purchase the shawl in 2007 after it was purported to be at the scene of the murder of Catherine Eddowes. Kosminski, who was age 23 at the time of the murders, has long been considered a suspect. He had schizophrenia and was in a mental asylum at the time of his death in 1919. Thanks to Kosminski's oldest brother's great-great-granddaughter, the revelation was made after they provided a DNA sample. So if this is true, that's pretty freaking big. That's pretty huge.
Very.
Like, this is something nobody ever thought would come to, fruition. They never thought they'd ever find out who Jack the Ripper was. And the fact that they're able to pull DNA off of a shawl that's 100 years old, essentially, is pretty amazing.
Very.
Needless to say, Jack the Ripper has lived in infamy and lore for more than a century after he committed the murders of at least 5 women in the Whitechapel between August and November of 1888. Police have never found Jack the Ripper, who was also referred to as the Whitechapel Murderer and the Leather Apron. He was infamous for slitting the throat of his victims before removing the internal organs of at least 3 of them. Some of the victims have been thought to be prostitutes, but according to Penguin Books, there is little evidence to support this. According to the Daily Mail, Edwards has hired a legal team to help gain an inquest after he found a 100% DNA match. Descendants of both Eddowes and Kosminski have backed this move. As he told Today, Edwards and his team have sent a letter to the Attorney General requesting permission to go to Britain's High Court for a further inquest. The hope is that Kosminski can be legally tied to the murder. The name Jack the Ripper has become sensationalized, and it has gone down in history as this famous character, Karen Miller, the great-great-great-granddaughter of Eddowes, told the Mail. What about the real name of the person who did this? Having the real person legally named in a court which can consider all the evidence would be a form of justice for the victims. We have got the proof. Now we need this inquest to legally name the killer. So, breaking news here on Shivers. Jack the Ripper may have been discovered. The identity of Jack the Ripper may have been discovered. We'll have to keep an eye and we'll have to follow this because that's pretty big, you know. That's the story. That's the only reason we did news this week or this month, because that's one of the ones you kind of have to do.
Yes, it is.
So definitely keep a lookout for that. I'll have to look that was from an Australian news source, but I mean I've read stuff on Jack the Ripper. I've watched, documentaries and movies, and I'm not necessarily a scholar when it comes to Jack the Ripper, but I don't know who Aaron Kosminski is, but apparently he's been named in a bunch of books as one of the big suspects. But I also know that a lot of people thought H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper, as well as, there's some people over here in America. Of course, a bunch of American serial killers that were attributed to possibly being Jack the Ripper, but had moved to America.
That is big news.
That it is. Like I said, we'll have to keep an eye on it and report back if they get the inquiry at the high court.
Oh yeah.
So, needless to say, we're going to move on to our next story. We're going to go to Pennsylvania. Needless to say, eggs are pretty expensive right now. I think eggs here, I'm not sure everywhere else, but here in Ohio, at least this part of Ohio, eggs aren't as bad. I mean, they're not as bad as a lot of places, but I think we're paying $4.99 for a dozen eggs.
Holy cow.
Yeah, we're paying $4.99 for a dozen eggs here. But me and the wife actually just bought 2 dozen eggs from a guy who raises chickens for $3 a dozen. So we're set right now.
I lucked out. My neighbor gave me a whole bunch of duck eggs.
Mm-hmm. I haven't tried duck eggs. I'm not a big fan of duck, though.
I like both duck eggs and ducks. And when you just generally need eggs, they're a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like ducks. I like the animal of the ducks. I just don't like eating duck. The meat doesn't taste as good to me as I know a lot of people do. A lot of people like it. But I'm also...
I was thinking to say, how many people have you eaten?
Oh, I mean, just a couple. Just a couple. Maybe 30 years in the haunt industry, you kind of got to taste it eventually, you know. But in Antrim Township, Pennsylvania, somebody stole 100,000 eggs. And the police have no godly clue who did it. So the heist of 100,000 eggs from the back of a trailer in Pennsylvania has become a whodunit that police have yet to crack. I will say this about America. Especially the police here in America, we're really bad at hide and seek. We're really bad at being the seeker sometimes. 4 days after the theft, that law enforcement say could be tied to the sky-high cost of eggs. I mean, no shit. No leads have come in. Trooper First Class Megan Frazier, a spokesperson for the Pennsylvania State Police, said Wednesday, "We're relying on leads from people from the community, so we're hoping that somebody knows something and they'll call us and give us some tips. Snitches get stitches."
Snitches get stitches, and also some of them are very bad at wanting to actually take down the people who did what they did because it was a good thing they did it.
Yes. Police are also following up with any possible witnesses and looking into surveillance footage that could help them identify the perpetrator as they race to solve the mystery. "In my career, I've never heard of 100,000 eggs being stolen. This is definitely unique," said Frazier. I mean, when was the last time eggs were $5 a dozen?
Within this year.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. But bird flu,
COVID.
of course. Yeah, I didn't know they
COVID
were
was
that.
the last time. I remember paying $20 for one of those big boxes of eggs from Walmart and being like,
bird flu is forcing farmers to slaughter millions of chickens a month, pushing U.S. egg prices to more than double their cost in the summer of 2023. And it appears there may be no relief in sight with Easter approaching. Oh God, I didn't think about that. The only thing I kind of like my hard boiled eggs. That's the only reason I would ever care about Easter. But so apparently, on the open market, they are worth about $40,000, which means this crime is a felony. Pete and Jerry's Organics LLC said in a statement that the company is working with law enforcement to investigate the theft. We take this matter seriously and are committed to resolving it as quickly as possible, the statement said. What in the world? Y'all didn't hear that, did you?
no.
Some music just started playing on the news report I was reading. So yeah, if you need some eggs, I'm pretty sure someone's selling a bunch of eggs at a flea market in Pennsylvania right now.
Oh yeah. Or just find your local egg dealers. I have like 3 around me. That helps.
Well, here in Ohio, it's weird because certain cities, like Dayton proper, you can actually have chickens in your backyard as long as you have a coop. But like Riverside, where I live, you cannot. And Riverside's like right next to Dayton.
Yes.
Just north of Dayton. It's just one of those weird things. Actually, we might be south of Dayton. That's the weird thing. Not living in Virginia Beach, I can't use the beach as reference to east. So it gets a little harder up here. But I forgot where I was going with that. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next story. We'll do this one real quick. So a flooded quarry, a mysterious millionaire, and the dream of a new Atlantis. I have not read this yet. I just found this right before we came on, before we went live. So bear with me on this one. If this story sucks, I apologize. But an innovative mission on the Welsh border, funded by an anonymous private investor, has begun work to create a permanent human settlement under the sea. That is nightmare fuel for me.
Yes.
I can't swim. And I'm actually
Neither
I
can
grew up on the ocean, but I tell you right now, I didn't go in the ocean. And I panic if the water goes above a certain, like by a certain area on my chest. If the water goes above that, I will start panicking in the water. So yeah, I'm not moving under the sea.
Me neither.
Down an easy to miss turnoff on the A48 just outside of Chepstow. Email me. I'm probably butchering the name. Email me and yell at me. On the Welsh border, the gentle rumble of trucks, cranes, and people at work mixes with bird song in what is an otherwise peaceful rural setting. It is a crisp and sunny winter morning when I visit, and at first glance, the site appears to be little more than prefab containers and a car park. This is from The Guardian. .com. This is where the article comes from, and it's written by someone named Lisa Batchelor. And apparently she's wrote it in the first person. So, yet behind the scenes, a group of men and women with expertise in diving, marine biology, technology, finance, construction, and manufacturing are building something extraordinary. They have come together with a single mission statement: to make humans aquatic. You know, Didn't we just have a bunch of billionaires show us why this is a bad fucking idea like last year?
Yes, we did. People are still joking about it.
Oh, because it's hilarious. We're going down to see the Titanic. Oh, now you're part of the Titanic. Like, at some point, this might be the equivalent to the weekly put it the fuck back.
Yes.
Because how did you not learn?
I don't know how they didn't learn. People keep dying in the water. How do they not get it?
No idea. Sorry, I had two sneezes came on suddenly. Sorry about that. But their project is called Deep, not the Deep, but Deep, and the site was chosen after a global search for the perfect location to build and test underwater accommodation. With the project founders, which the project founders say will enable them to establish a permanent human presence under the sea from 2027. You know, I believe Mother Nature has already told us, stay the fuck out of the water by not giving us gills.
Yes.
And making it pretty impossible to breathe underwater for long periods of time.
On top of the part where it literally pushes against your body as you go down.
Yes. So this is just basically looking at this. It's just a bunch of rich people talking the rest of the way, and it kind of seems pretty boring. So we're gonna just know that for some reason, somebody on the Welsh border, the border of Wales, is building an undersea community. Now, I've seen and I've heard of, like, hotels under the sea, but I've never once in my life heard about, like, living there. Oh. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna stay in England, though. I believe this is England. We'll do this real quick so I can show the video here in a second. So, doorbell camera films woman walking past a ghost. Now, of course, this is all for interpretation. If you believe it's a ghost or not, or just camera tricks or whatever. But an eerie piece of camera footage from England shows.
Sorry, I was trying to delete it.
No, you're fine. I thought it was the video. So two women passing each other as they walk down the street, and then one of them vanishes into thin air. The spooky scene reportedly unfolded earlier this month outside of a residence in Staffordshire, as Jackie Batt was out for a morning stroll. After returning home, she received a message from her neighbor, Carrie Ann Doherty, or Doherty, whatever, email me and yell at me, who indicated that her doorbell camera had just captured something rather unusual. In the footage, Bats can be seen crossing paths with a woman she described as a lady dressed in 40s clothing. However, the mystified walker marveled, I didn't see anyone. I would have remembered seeing her. Making the video all the more odd, after Bat passed that's the seemingly out-of-time woman, the stranger subsequently grew extremely tall as if she had been stretched out before dematerializing altogether. Certain that she did not recall the weirdly dressed walker, she mused that it may have been a ghost from the neighborhood's distant past. The building where we live was built in the 1940s for the miners at the time, Bat explained. I can only assume it's a miner's wife. So, where's the share screen? We'll watch the video together real quick and we'll see. Share screen. Boop, 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 boop. And here we go. to left. I mean, what are your thoughts?
It does look like she's see-through as she goes past. Or it could be a glitch in the camera.
That's what I'm thinking, because it doesn't look like the best camera in the world. It doesn't look like the best camera in the world, and just there's so much. There's just so much going, that can be explained in that video, honestly. So I'm gonna chalk this one up to pareidolia.
I love that word.
You said you love that word?
Pareidolia is such a fun word.
It is, but people get so pissed when you say it.
That they do.
But the thing about it, the thing about it is, and this is why I'm a benefit to be when I go ghost hunting. I feel like I'm a benefit to people. Is I'm not necessarily a skeptic that doesn't believe in the paranormal, because I 100% believed in the paranormal and ghosts and spirits and things like that. But I don't believe everything is paranormal.
Exactly. Debunk first. And then if you can't debunk it, it probably is true.
Yeah. Exactly. Like there's certain things, like even watching the ghost shows and things like that. Happy Valentine's Day to you, Stu.
I hope you have the best one ever, Stu.
But like watching Ghost Adventures and that, there was a couple of a lot of that shit is we all know a lot of that stuff is Hollywood, or just put on, or just easily explained. But there's certain places that even watching it on the shows of Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures, whatever, or even on YouTube, there's a creepiness to it. One of the places is the Villisca Axe Murder House, and I believe it's in Iowa. Do you know anything about the Villisca Axe Murder House?
Yes. I love listening to different things about that one.
Because it's just such a weird case, I don't think it was ever solved, but watching the show, it just felt creepy watching and looking at the place. That Poveglia Island, that when Ghost Adventures went to Poveglia Island, there was just something about that island that, felt creepy not even being there.
Oh yeah.
So Stu says we're all sound, light, and stardust.
Very much true.
So finally, we'll go ahead and do this last one, then we'll jump into the serial killers and the romantic killers in that here on Shivers this week. But I kind of wanted to do this one because this one I found this right before we went on the air, so I haven't had a chance to read it. But this comes from Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Aliens blamed for bizarre Las Vegas murder. So a Las Vegas man, go ahead.
This has got to be good if aliens are blamed for it.
It's a 2-paragraph story, so we'll see. Here we go. There's the whole story there. Let's click on this. We'll go over here. So a man accused of killing his father told police that aliens told him to do it, and that he felt like he was on a different planet, according to the arrest report. Timothy Sarangla, I'm butchering this guy, so I know I am. 35, is facing a charge of murder with the use of a deadly weapon. He was taken into custody on the killing February 5th in a Southwest Valley neighborhood. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police dispatched officers to the home near Blue Diamond Road and Decatur Boulevard after a hysterical woman, later identified as La's mother, called police to report her 73-year-old husband Yoon Jinla was unconscious and not breathing, the report said. Yoon Jinla who was discovered in the master bedroom, suffered a gunshot wound to the back of the right side of his head, according to Clark County Coroner's Office. Police documents stated La's mother told police their son lived with them, but she had not seen him since the morning when she left for work. She described her son as having a medical condition which was redacted in the report. Police found La walking in the neighborhood and took him into custody. During an interview with police about the shooting, he told them he believed he was saving a worker, from being tortured, and this worker was wearing the skin of his father's face, according to the documents. La told police that he walked around the neighborhood after the shooting. Police found the 9mm gun and a 9mm casing at the house. La had an initial appearance in Las Vegas Justice Court Tuesday morning. He is scheduled for a preliminary hearing on February 25th. So drugs. Are we all in agreement? Drugs.
Sounds good, because what the hell?
I mean, the thing, it's not as crazy as it sounds, though, because how many people out there use the excuse, the devil told me to kill my son, or the devil told me to kill my child, or my wife, or that person?
Yeah, that is used a lot, but it's still like...
Oh, it's still crazy as hell.
He's wearing his face, and the other random thought I had was deadly weapon. Even a pillow's a deadly weapon.
Yes. But the weird thing is, like I said, he said that he thought the alien was wearing his father's face.
Yeah.
That's out there. That is just
Very
crazy. So that's gonna do it for the news. We're gonna jump right into this now. So again, the rules for this week's episode that I kept for myself was serial killing couples, serial killing with love, and lovers' lanes. There are plenty of cases out there that involve couples who killed together. Of course, there's a lot of true crime out there based on love, on lovers killing each other or ex-lovers killing each other and things like that. Even Shakespeare, of course, ended a lot of his plays, most famously, of course, Romeo and Juliet, with the lovers dying. So that's what we kept it to this week because it is Valentine's Day. And we'll do this real quick. And if you're in the Dayton area, of course, you can come see us tomorrow night at Hell's Dungeon at 8 o'clock. We will be putting on, I believe it is Till Death Do Us Part, The Haunted House. I will not be Cupid, after all. What I'll be doing tomorrow night, Cupid really wouldn't fit. The Cupid character wouldn't fit for what I'm doing tomorrow. So the Gravedigger will return. But we will be open tomorrow night from 8 to midnight, as well as Saturday night from 8 to midnight. But Saturday, we have a very special treat, as you can come in at 5 and join us for a murder mystery dinner party. We do have a lot of spots. A lot of spots are taken, so you still have time, though, to reserve your spot. With the $60, I do believe if you buy it as a couple, I think it's a little cheaper. But with your spot, you get dinner, you get the murder mystery show, and you get to go through the haunted house as well. So come check us out this weekend at Hell's Dungeon. And I will be extra mean to you.
Yay! We need a video sent for our viewers of the Gravedigger being mean to us. Even if you're using me as the target, we need a video.
I will say there is no. I do not believe there. Outside of the music video we made, there is no video of the Gravedigger.
Well, there's the intro video of the
Yeah,
Gravedigger
yeah.
on the
There's the
side.
rules. But now, when I did the rules, though, that was about a week or so before we opened, and my actual character didn't really come into fruition. The actual character until the second week of the actual haunt, when I finally got the character down pat. Like, even what I'm doing tomorrow, they haven't told me much about it. So this is literally my lines and what I'm going to be saying and things like that are going to be on the fly.
Yes, but it was
So
still fun to be the target of the Gravedigger and us show people how cool he is.
he is. He is a don't take shit from nobody. We'll call you out on bullshit kind of guy. He is. He was kind of mean this year. Especially if you ask him a stupid question. If you ask him a stupid question, you do not. If you want to ask a question, the first thing I'm going, the Gravedigger does is it a stupid question? Is it a dumbass question? And if you tell me yes or probably, then no, you cannot answer it. You cannot ask me the question. But my favorite line that I did was when people, I will always pick on you. If you come through a haunted house and you come to my scene and you've got a freaking hood on your head, I will destroy you. My favorite thing is like when we would walk in with their hoods on, I would just look at them and go, let me guess, you were one of those children who believed that if you put a thin layer of fabric upon your head, that it would protect you from the monster under your bed. Because as adults, we know that's not true.
Whereas my children are slightly different. They will wear it, but they know they are children of monsters. So therefore, they will be monsters as well. And my daughter will ask you for your ankles.
Oh, it didn't work every time, but when it did, it was great because people were just basically like, holy shit, what did we get ourselves into? This is the first freaking scene.
Yeah, and that's why it's so much fun. But I just seeing my daughter ask the sewer dweller, can I have your knees or can I have your ankles? After that would be like hilarious.
I kind of don't think anybody wants my knees or ankles. They kind of hurt all the time, but
She'll still ask. They're great to frame.
This is true. She can have my back if she wants it. That hurts all the time too. Oh, my finger's finally starting to bend properly. So, for those who don't know, I did dislocate my finger almost a month ago now.
Dude, it took me a year for my ankle to start working again.
Oh, my ankle's not. Ever since last year at Valentine's Day, I ended up walking down the stairs to the haunt. For those who have never been to Hell's Dungeon, it's in the basement of a shopping center. You have to walk down. It's about 20 to 25 steps to get into to get it down to the bottom and to get into the dungeon. We do have an elevator, but it doesn't work. But it's like 25 to 30 steps almost. It's a lot of steps. And walking down them last year, right almost near the bottom, I ended up rolling my ankle and falling down about 6 or 7 steps and spraining my ankle. And working the night, I did work the rest of the night. Luckily, in the elevator, I do have a chair right outside of the door. So Cupid was limping around a little bit last year. But we digress. So our first case this week is going to be the one that used to scare the crap out of me as a kid. Once again, for those who don't know, and I think everybody who usually listens to the show knows this by now because I talk about it all the time. I'm originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia. We are what you would call, Virginia Beach, Virginia was part of what you would call Hampton Roads, which is like a community of 7 cities. Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Hampton, Norfolk, Suffolk, Portsmouth, and Newport News. Williamsburg is actually thrown in there too, because Newport News isn't really, nobody really wants to claim Newport News. But Williamsburg used to be one of my, I've already done an episode on here, of course, at Colonial Williamsburg, the ghosts or the hauntings of Colonial Williamsburg. Used to be one of my favorite stomping grounds as a paranormal investigator. Also to the point where I used to go to Colonial Williamsburg. Like if I was ever having a bad day or my depression was hitting a little harder than normal, I would go to Colonial Williamsburg because it was only 45 minutes away. Now, when I was younger, back in the 80s, there was a serial killer that was targeting what we call the Colonial Parkway. We always called him the Colonial Parkway murderer or killer. One of the things about Virginia, the coolest things about that area is you have 3 historical parks within 5 miles of each, about 5 to 10 miles of each other. You have Jamestown, the first settlement, first American settlement. You have Colonial Williamsburg, which when you go there, Colonial Williamsburg is set pre-Revolutionary War, so when you're walking around, you're not seeing American flags flying, you're seeing British flags flying because this is still a British colony. But it's on the cusp of the Revolutionary War. It's one of those areas where everybody's in colonial, like where you can go learn how they used to make horseshoes or basically how they used to live back in the like 16 and 1700s. They have reenactments firing muskets and cannons. They have the governor's mansion that you can go into in that. But it's also on the Colonial Williamsburg is on the campus of the College of William and Mary, which is the second oldest college in America. Number 1, of course, being Harvard. Thomas Jefferson went to College of William and Mary, I believe. John Adams went to Harvard. A lot of the founding fathers at least studied a little bit at the College of William and Mary. And then you also have, but they'll also do like reenactments of Patrick Henry reading, "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death." You'll have George Washington ride up on horseback and make a speech to the soldiers that are doing the musket demonstrations and that. But then you go up a little bit north to Yorktown, where, of course, the American Revolution ended. That's where George Custer, you have Custer's Cave, which is supposedly very haunted itself, signed the surrender. That's where he surrendered to the American colony, to George Washington and the American colonies. So in that area, you have 3 major, historical events. They are connected by a road called Colonial Parkway.
Yes.
It is a very dark road. You're talking thick Virginia forest all around. It's one of those areas that really was never touched by development in that, because it's still considered an historic, the historic park. So they can't, build stuff there and that. But if you're driving down the road, there are no street lights. The moon can't come through the woods. The trees are so thick that the moon doesn't come through the woods and that to light the road. Like it is, when I say it's creepy dark, it is dark. You can barely see. So during the 80s, like the mid to late 80s, we had a serial killer who I believe the final count was 10. It was 5 couples. But he could be attributed to more. That's the thing. And Up until recently, nobody knew who it was. They never caught the person. So we travel to Williamsburg, Virginia for our first case. Williamsburg is an idyllic town. Think cobblestone streets, colonial reenactors in white wigs, and pantaloons belting out famous speeches on the steps of colonial-style brick buildings, quaint restaurants, English gardens, and the College of William and Mary, chartered in 1693 by King William and Queen Mary of England. Now, you can't drive in Colonial Williamsburg. The actual historical part, you cannot drive. People still live in Colonial Williamsburg. Like the area itself is open 24 hours. You can go walk around Colonial Williamsburg on the outside whenever you really want to because, they got the college there, people live there, but you're not driving anywhere. So the Colonial Parkway is a beautiful, narrow, 23-mile long, pebbly textured road that links Virginia's historic triangle, Jamestown, Yorktown, and Williamsburg, and is part of the National Park Service's Colonial National Historical Park. But the road itself has a dark past. Between 1986 and 1989, see, now this says 6. This is from from some of the other articles I read and wrote about. There's at least 10 that they've credited the Colonial Parkway murderer with. 6 people were murdered and 2 people went missing along the parkway. So the first victims were Rebecca Dowski and Kathy Thomas. They are the first 2 known victims. Kathleen Marion Kathy Thomas, who was 27. She was a United States Naval Academy graduate and a College of William and Mary She was a United States Naval Academy graduate. Williamsburg, of course, not very far from Norfolk. Norfolk is the largest naval base in the world. So, needless to say, Naval Academy graduates aren't that hard to find there. In College of William and Mary Sr., Rebecca Ann Dowski, 21, who was a business management major. The couple had only been seeing each other for 6 months. Between 5:30 and 5:45 a.m. on October 12th, 1986, a pedestrian jogger saw a car, a white 1980 Honda Civic, down an embankment at the Cheatham Annex Overlook on the Colonial Parkway, 7 miles east of Williamsburg. The vehicle had veered off the road and into the thick, dense shrubbery only a few feet from a 15-foot drop into the York River. Sorry, I thought there was a little more information. A highway patrolman was called to the scene and discovered Thomas and Dowski's bodies inside Thomas's Civic. The lesbian couple had disappeared after leaving a computer lab at William and Mary on October 9th at around 6:30 p.m. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about when we originally talked about Colonial Parkway is even to this day, it is because of how dark it is and how isolated Colonial Parkway is, because after dark or after everything closes, essentially, nobody. So, needless to say, it's a great spot to go park, do your thing, if you have no privacy, basically. It's definitely a lover's lane kind of thing, except without being an actual lover's lane. So they went missing. The last time they were seen alive was leaving the computer lab at William and Mary on October 9th at around 6:30 p.m. Thomas had gone to the Parkway in the past to be alone with a romantic partner. Kathy and Becky were strangled with rope, and then their throats were slit from beyond ear to ear. Kathy was essentially decapitated. Their bodies were then put into. I'm sorry. This part comes from a website. I can't remember the name of the website. I should have wrote it down. That is run by the brother of one of the first victims. But Kathy was essentially decapitated. Their bodies were then put into the 1980 Honda Civic. Kathy was squeezed in the hatchback area of the Honda, and Rebecca Dowski's body was placed diagonal on the seat in the back seat of the two-door Honda. Kathy, 27, graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy and had recently retired from the Navy. She was working as a stockbroker in Norfolk when she was introduced to 21-year-old William & Mary student Rebecca Dowski, who was getting ready to graduate with a degree in business in the spring. The scene of the murders was gruesome. From the way their bodies were placed and where the car itself was found, it looked like the suspect had tried to stage the scene and had even tried to set the car on fire with diesel fuel, which, if the suspect had been knowledgeable enough, would have known that diesel fuel won't catch fire with a match. After the car failed to light, the killer put the Honda in neutral, pushed it over the edge of the Overlook's embankment, and it rolled down toward the York River. The killer was likely hoping the car would roll into the water, but instead, it got caught in the underbrush. This was now the second thing that hadn't gone according to the murderer's plan. He probably got lucky here because they believe the incident took place on the night of Thursday, October 9th, or early morning Friday, October 10th. The car was far enough down the embankment that you couldn't see it from the Parkway. Over 100 latent and full prints were found on the interior and exterior of the car, but they matched no one in police records. Thomas apparently struggled with her attacker as a clump of hair was later found between her fingers. Both women were fully clothed and there was no evidence of sexual assault. That's going to be an ongoing thing with this killer is none of his victims appear to have been sexually assaulted. Which, with serial killers, kinda is one of those things that it's a staple almost, you know?
Yes.
Like a few things they say every serial that makes the perfect recipe for a serial killer: childhood trauma with their parents, a whack in the head, basically getting dropped on your head, hitting the head very hard, basically have any kind of head injury, and various like sexual disorders or they're obsessed with sex. This guy didn't like I said, it's gonna be a thing where this guy did not sexually assault any of his victims. The authorities ruled out robbery as a motive since both women's purses were located with the vehicle and no money or jewelry had been taken. At that time, the police believed that the murders happened elsewhere as there was not much blood in the car itself. In November of 1986, just weeks after the murder, press reported that FBI profilers at Quantico, again not very far from Williamsburg, who studied serial killers were constructing a profile of the person or persons responsible for the murder. Kathy and Rebecca's case was investigated by the FBI because it took place on federal land. This detail would later play an interesting role because in the murder cases that followed, different law enforcement agencies would be in charge depending on where the murders took place. So, in one night, this guy killed 2 people. He kills his first couple, which, of course, just happens to be a lesbian couple in the 80s. Any thoughts so far, Jen?
That from what I've learned, that he's not doesn't seem to be exclusive to the type of couple as long as it's a couple.
He's not.
If I'm not wrong.
As we read along, I believe, in my opinion, it's just who he happens upon.
Yeah. If he finds you at that moment, you're screwed.
Yes. Now, I also believe he's not very intelligent. Especially because, again, I have the benefit of knowing, even from back in the 80s, who their suspects were, who they were looking for, what type of person they were looking for. But it's one of those things where it was so close to home that as a kid, and this is like right about the time Unsolved Mysteries is out. So as a kid, I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries at night going, yep, this is definitely one of those shows I shouldn't be watching alone. So now we move on to the second victims, David Knobling and Robin Edwards. Things seemed to return to normal until September 22nd, 1987, when the bodies of another young couple were found along the bank of the James River in Virginia. Be prepared to get a little get a little mad. I'm just going to tell you all that right now if you're listening. This is just the story. Just the story of what happened. So the 2 bodies were David Knobling, who was 20, and Robin Edwards, who was 14. Let that sink in for a minute.
Children.
One was 20, one was 14. Now, in Virginia, the age of consent is 16, not 14. Who had been missing since September 19th? Robin had gone on a date that evening with David's younger cousin, and David had driven them to the arcade. However, at some point during the evening, she and David had arranged to meet up alone, despite Robin being in 8th grade and David being in his 20s. It's not. I don't think it's on here, but basically he took the kids to a movie and then to the arcade. They went to see Dragnet. So at midnight, David drove his pickup to Robin's house. It was the last time either of them was seen alive. David's truck was discovered 2 days later, left in a parking area. Eerily, when the truck was discovered, the windshield wipers were turned on along with the radio and the doors were left wide open. So that tells me one thing. They missed the killer by mere minutes.
Yes.
Because the battery would have died if it was left there for a long period of time with the doors open, the radio playing, and the windshield wipers going. Similar to Kathy and Rebecca's crime scene, it was like the scene had been staged. David and Robin's bodies weren't found near the pickup truck. Instead, they were found lying on the banks of the James River after the current had washed them ashore. Unlike the previous victims, David and Robin hadn't been strangled or their heads or their throats cut. They had both been fatally shot. Robin's jeans were unbuttoned and her bra had been removed. This made investigators wonder whether the killer had assaulted Robin, but they knew it was possible that David and Robin had a sexual relationship. So he might have been the one to partially remove her clothing. The likelihood is he's the one that, removed the clothing. The driver's side window was partially rolled down, causing police to believe that the perpetrator had possibly been posing as or was some sort of uniformed officer. Both victims had been shot, Robin in the back of the head execution style, and David twice, once in the head and once in the shoulder, like he had been running from the killer. Robin's pants were partially rolled down, but police were unsure if they're basically, we'd already talked about that. The murders had not happened on the Colonial Parkway, but police linked the cases due to the fact that both sets of victims were couples who had been killed at or around Lover's Lane areas. And the two locations were only about a 30-minute drive apart. Once again, despite the best investigative efforts of the police, the case went cold. The killer could have asked for David's license and registration, resulting in David winding the window down to pass them over, and then ordered both David and Robin to get out of the vehicle, explaining why the doors were left open. So those are your third and fourth victims, essentially. Needless to say, no one's going to miss David.
No.
David's kind of a scumbag.
Yes.
So we move now on to our fifth and sixth victims, Cassandra Haley and Richard Call. 7 months later, and on April 10th, 1988, Cassandra Haley, who was 18, and Keith Call, who was 20, were reported missing from Christopher Newport University, where they went to college. Christopher Newport University is actually in Newport News, which is basically the city just south of Williamsburg. Well, of Yorktown. It goes Yorktown, Newport News, Yorktown, then Williamsburg, as you're going west on 64. Needless to say, I've been there a couple of times. They disappeared from a party they attended together as a first date, which, according to the couple's friends, actually didn't go so well. A day later, Richard's Toyota Celica was found abandoned at the York River Overlook, a little over 2 miles from where Kathy and Rebecca were found along the Colonial Parkway. The keys were on the driver's seat, and a watch and eyeglasses were left on the dashboard. Nearly all of the clothing Call was wearing, including his underwear, was also found in the back seat of the car, as were some of Haley's. Police later confirmed that it was the same clothing the couple had worn the night they disappeared. Bailey's purse and Call's wallet, however, were missing. Police dogs tracked the two students' scent past the site of the Dowski-Thomas vehicle recovery to the Indian Creek shoreline, where dogs tried to enter the water. Park authorities initially suggested they had gone swimming and drowned, but a claim that was met with great skepticism, given the water temperature and the steep 20-foot embankment. In the days after the Call Haley disappearance, the FBI became aware of a fisherman in a pickup who approached at least one other couple on the parkway around the same time. Keep that in mind. So 5 and 6 disappeared, presumed dead, and apparently didn't get along too well. At least not enough for a first date. So we move on a year and a half later. 2 more young people went missing on the Colonial Parkway. Near Colonial Parkway, I'm sorry. On Memorial Day weekend of 1989, Daniel Lauer, 21, was driving to his brother's house in Virginia Beach with his brother's girlfriend, Anna Maria Phillips, who was 18. Lauer was planning on moving in with Anna Maria and his brother Clint, and had gone home to pick up his clothing and other items while Anna Maria visited with her family before heading back to Virginia Beach. Lauer's car, a gold 1972 Chevy Nova, was later found abandoned at the Interstate 64 rest stop in New Kent County. Now, here's the thing about that area. New Kent County is literally, that rest stop is 15 minutes, maybe, north of Colonial Williamsburg and the Colonial Parkway and that. It is the only rest stop on I-64 between Virginia Beach and Richmond. So going to Washington, D.C. as a kid in the 80s, we had to stop there sometimes, knowing that there was a serial killer on the loose. Can you take a guess why this shit scared the crap out of me as a kid?
Yeah, I think we finally get the idea of why you're scared shitless.
Yes, because we would stop on the way back from DC. It would be dark. It would be 10 o'clock at night. And I'm one of the only boys in the car. So guess who gets to go into the men's room by himself?
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah. So, but the weird thing is, though, if they were heading to Virginia Beach, they would have been driving east on 64, not west. Now, here's the weird thing about 64, too. 64, it is 64 east and 64 west. They don't go east and west. It goes north and south. Because if it went east, you'd be driving into the Atlantic Ocean or the Chesapeake Bay. But they found Daniel's car on the east or the westbound side, the side going towards Richmond and away from Virginia Beach. So they didn't find it on the way to Virginia Beach. They found his car on the way leaving Virginia Beach. Facing the wrong direction instead of the rest stop that was on the way to their final destination. The car had likely been moved. It is unclear whether Phelps and Lauer were killed at the rest stop or elsewhere. Both the driver and passenger side doors were unlocked, and the key is still in the ignition. Police found dirt and grass stains on the vehicle's underside, suggesting the car had recently been driven through the woods. Now, there is a thick line of trees that separates 64 West and 64 East. So what that tells me, at least, is that the guy, that the killer probably drove it across the interstate, across that embankment and that median of trees and dirt. It's almost like a small forest, but that separates the two sides of the interstate. Phelps's purse was found inside the car. So again, robbery was ruled out as a motive. But on October 19th, the skeletonized bodies of Phelps and Lauer were found in a wooded area by hunters along Interstate 64 between Williamsburg and Richmond. They were covered in an electric blanket from Lauer's car and were badly decomposed. This made it impossible to determine either the cause of death or whether there had been a sexual assault. The hunters that discovered the bodies on a logging road about a quarter mile from Courthouse Road, a location about a mile from the rest stop where Lauer's car was found. In 2010, a note was discovered in a box taken years earlier from Phelps's apartment. The note, which was undated and purportedly written by Phelps, indicated that she was to meet someone in a blue van at a rest stop. So those are your victims that we know of. Let me get on here real quick. So, what do we say? 8 victims, 2 went missing.
Yes.
Now, there's a couple of more people that could be tied as well to this case. One being Brian Craig Pettinger, 25, a heavy equipment operator employed as a maintenance man for a local apartment complex and was last seen at a Hampton, Virginia ballroom dance studio on December 4th, 1987 at 11:30 p.m. Pettinger was training to become a ballroom dance instructor. 2 days after reporting him missing, Pettinger's wife discovered his vehicle in the parking lot of the Newmarket North Mall. That would be off of Mercury Boulevard in Hampton.
Yes.
Hampton also is not very far from Williamsburg. When you're going from Virginia Beach to Williamsburg, you have to go through the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which goes underneath the Chesapeake Bay. You're in Norfolk when you go into the tunnel, you're in Hampton when you come out, and then you've got about a 15-20 minute drive left before getting to Williamsburg. 2 months later, on February 3rd, 1988, fishermen found Pettinger's body floating in a marshy area of the James River in Suffolk, Virginia, near the mouth of the Chuckatuck Creek that flows into the James River. His wrists and ankles were tied, and a rope was around his neck. The lead investigator in this case believed Pettinger had likely been hog-tied. The autopsy showed that Pettinger had blunt force blows to the back of the head. He was found to have been thrown alive into the river and drowned, unable to swim. Pettinger's murder remains unsolved. It occurred during the period and near the area where the murders took place. And then the more possible additional victims would be Mike Margaret and Donna Hall. Their bodies were discovered in a wooded area approximately 300 yards southwest of the King's Crossing apartment complex in Henrico. Margaret and Hall had been dating for 4 years and were engaged to be married. On August 17th, the couple had told their respective families they planned to go on a camping trip together. And this is the last time they were seen alive. 3 days later, a retired dentist walking his dog discovered Margaret's Jeep backed into a depression off the trail with the passenger door open, keys in the ignition, and ashtray open. One red bandana was hanging from the rearview mirror and another loosely tied around the clutch. The canvas top of the Jeep had been rolled up and pinned back, even though it had rained over the weekend. Inside the back end, there were 2 suitcases and a paper bag filled with clothes. A trail of blood led to the bodies of Hall and Margaret underneath a checkered red and blue blanket about 20 feet away. Both victims had been stabbed and their throats slit. The state coroner stated they died at 2 a.m. on August 18th, only hours after they were last seen. Both had the sedative Demerol in their systems. Hall's body was found without shoes, no defensive wounds, and clutching pine needles, leading investigators to believe that she and Margaret were actually killed with their bodies where their bodies were found. Margaret also had defensive wounds and a comparatively lower dosage of Demerol in his system. Some detectives believe that Hall and Margaret were the first victims of the Colonial Parkway killer due to similarities in modus operandi. There was also, we'll get to that next one here in a minute. Finally, Lori Powell. Lori Ann Powell Compton, 18, who was a Gloucester County high school graduate, went missing on March 8th, 1988, after having an argument with her boyfriend, which ended with Lori getting out of his car. She was last seen by him at 11:30 p.m. walking on Route 614 towards Route 17 in the White Marsh area of Gloucester County, Virginia. On April 2nd, 1988, Lori's body was spotted floating in the James River off Craney Island near Ragged Island. Her body was found nude with multiple stab wounds to her back. Compton worked for the same security company where Pettinger and Edward's mother worked at the time of her murder. Powell's boyfriend, Chris Cutler, was a suspect in the murder. Now, there was also some killings in the Shenandoah National Park that they tried to tie to this as well, but Shenandoah National Park is nowhere near Virginia Beach, Williamsburg, or anywhere like that. It's on the other side of the state and about a 4-hour drive almost. So, needless to say, the theories. The first or the second couple, they thought it could have been a cop or a retired cop or something like that. But growing up, the news always talked about it possibly being a fisherman or a grifter or a homeless person that just happened to be back in the area different times of the year. Most every time the vehicle has been staged. So, like I said, they never found the killer until recently. In 2024, they did in January of 2024, authorities announced that at least 2 of the murders, David Nobling and Robin Edwards, had been conclusively linked to an official suspect named Alan Wilder. Let me see if I might be able to. Hold on. Alan Wilmer Sr., a local fisherman who died in 2017. Wilmer who was also linked through DNA evidence to the previously unrelated murder of Teresa Lynn Spa Howell. Wilmer had been described as a suspect number 1 in the presumed murders of Cassandra Haley and Keith Call, but was freed after an FBI polygraph. So they do believe this guy is the killer.
Okay.
Here's Mr. Wilmer. This is what he would have looked like back in 1989, I believe. That is the gentleman 1988. That is the gentleman that they think is the Colonial Parkway killer. But between strangling, and that's the weird thing about this killer as well, is most killers have their one preferred way of killing people. This guy, slit their throats, stabbed them. If he did that one guy, they threw him in the river hogtied. Shot a couple, shot David Nobling and what was the other girl's name? I'm very bad with names. David Nobling too. And Rebecca. I don't know when Rebecca. I don't think. Hold on. Robin Edwards. So that is who they think did it, though. They believe it was Alan Wilmer Sr., a fisherman who passed away in 2017, which would make a little bit of sense because fishermen aren't necessarily the brightest. Now, when I say fisherman, I don't mean because I believe he was a professional fisherman. I don't believe he was like just somebody who goes out, fishes to relax. I believe that's what he did as a job, as a career is fishing. Because we have a lot, especially being in the Chesapeake Bay, we have a lot of crabbers who go out every morning and spend the day on the bay trying, pulling up crab traps and that.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts on the first case, Jen?
Being as I was between being born and 3 years old and in Tennessee, I really, at that point, had no idea it was happening. But as an adult, parts of it are, I think, there was one part of it where I think the 20-year-old was a little bit more scary than the serial killer.
You mean the pedophile?
Yeah. It's like...
Yeah, and normally it's the killer that's the pedophile.
Yeah, And I'm like, well, he's more of a monster than the serial killer. Oh, the serial killer is a pretty big monster.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. Like I said, if it was this Alan Wilmer guy, I don't believe he ever planned who to kill. These are people that were just victims of circumstance. In most cases, like he just happened to come across, Rebecca and Kathy, a year later or 2 years later, he happens upon this 20-year-old guy and this 14-year-old girl.
They're in his area. They're couples. They fit the bill. Then they die.
Yeah, and every single one, it's almost like he always dumps them into the river too. Now, that area of Virginia there is a lot of water. There's like 3 or 4 different rivers. You have the Chesapeake Bay, you have the Atlantic Ocean, all right there. So dumping a body into the river is going to end up washed up because the currents are weird. And if it doesn't wash up on the James River, it could float down the James River, float down the bay, start floating the other way down the York River. Like, there's all kinds of islands out there, and so many places for a body to wash up. So throwing a body in the ocean or in the water out there is just not a good idea.
But it does alleviate the one thing. If he did leave anything behind, it's going to wash away.
Yes. And also in the water, especially everything being salt water, because, again, the James River and the York River both feed into the Chesapeake Bay, which is, salt water. The salt will kind of decay the body a little bit quicker, too, So a lot of these bodies are, after he's dumping them, they're washing up less than a day later. Because, again, the currents in that are so strong. But that's going to do it for the Colonial Parkway Killer. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. Jen, what do you say we take a break?
Yes, roll that beautiful fave footage. I'm very proud of that.
It is very nice. It is. So, guys, we'll see you here back in about 3 minutes. I'm actually going to go take me an Advil. I got a little bit of a headache for some reason.
Good idea.
We will be right back in about 3 minutes. Enjoy this beautiful Faye Publishing footage that Jen was talking about, and a couple of others. So we'll see you guys in a few minutes.
See you soon.
Greetings and shabebans. We are the Retro Reductibus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite seems trying to say is that on Retro Reductibus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Dorking Podcast Network with with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Redoctopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
And we're back. Welcome back, everybody, to Shivers. Once again, I'm your host, Sewer Dweller, joined by the ever-lovely Friday. Maybe. She may have stepped away. But we're back. We are talking about romantic serial killers. We just covered the Colonial Parkway murders, or the Colonial Parkway killer. You back? She is not. Well, we discovered the Colonial Parkway killer, and it's like I said, it's one of those ones that I grew up with, and I grew up studying. And then it wasn't one of the Colonial Parkway killer isn't one of them. One of the cases that was covered by a lot like a lot of these other big major hitters were, but it was still very terrifying, especially living in Virginia at the time as a teenager, as a young teenager, like a preteen. Because 1986, I would have been 8 years old. Are we back? Maybe not yet.
Sorry about that. There was a bit of a mix-up.
No, you're good. You're good. I figured you was coming back.
Oh, definitely. I love this show.
I was just talking again about I would have been 8 years old during the Colonial Parkway killings, and between 8 and 1989, I was 11, 8 and 11 years old. And like I said, it scared the crap out of me as a kid because of what could happen, especially stopping at the rest stop in Williamsburg or New Kent County. Yeah.
Oh, as a kid, totally makes sense because one had came through our part of Georgia. Mm-hmm. I found out when I was younger. I can't remember which one, but one came through our part of Georgia at a truck stop not far from our home. Mm-hmm. And I get the idea very well.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, too, is, I also lived in Virginia during the time of the DC sniper. And people were terrified, were just absolutely terrified because they were just picking people off. They weren't even... Like, there wasn't even any rhyme or reason to who they were going after, what they were going after, They were just picking people off, and it took them forever to find them because of how they were doing it. And how they were doing it was very creative. And I can't remember. I think they slipped up, and that's how they ended up catching the DC snipers. But we're going to move on to our next case. We're going to do a little, I guess, one that's a little closer, more, I guess, younger, you would say, a more recent, not really a serial killer, but a murder that did have the news. Now, apparently, because these are called the Tinder murders is what they were called. This would be what are the names? Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail. There's only one victim, Sidney Loof, from Nebraska. Now, when I look up Tinder murders, because that's what they were listed as in the list of serial killing couples that I had found, they were listed as the Tinder killers. Apparently, this isn't the only case of someone being murdered on Tinder or off of Tinder.
No, swiping right is very dangerous.
Yeah, yes. Like, always meet in public. Always, if you have to you want a friend, have a friend. Do something, because good Lord, I didn't realize how many people have been murdered off of Tinder. But this was a really big case because Bailey Boswell, the female of the couple, was almost put to death. And she would have been, I'm a spoiler alert, she doesn't get the death penalty. Or she didn't get the death penalty. But if she had, she would have been the first female in the state of Nebraska to receive the death penalty. Because of what they did to Sidney Loof. Now, this takes place in Nebraska, which I believe, isn't Dell from Nebraska?
Yes, she is.
Well, so on November 15th, 2017, Sidney Loof, and again, if I'm saying this name wrong, I apologize. I'm bad saying names. But she left work for a Tinder date in Wilbur, Nebraska. The day after, Loof was reported missing after failing to appear for work at a local Menards store in Lincoln. 3 weeks later, her dismembered remains were found along a gravel road 60 miles from her date location. So for this, I have found the ruling, if you will, of the state of Nebraska versus Bailey Boswell. This goes a little more detailed than any of the other stuff that I had found about this case. Friday, do you know anything about this case?
No.
Apparently, I remember this being big news. But this is from the appeal that Boswell put in. So on November 16th, 2017, Loof was reported missing after she failed to show up for work at a hardware store in Lincoln, Nebraska. Loof's family and friends knew that a few days earlier, on November 14th, she had gone on a first date with a female named Audrey, who she met through an online dating app. Needless to say, it was Tinder. They also knew that Loof had a second date planned with Audrey for the evening of November 15th. After Loof was reported missing on November 16th, one of her friends located the online profile for Audrey. Make sure this is... Yep. Who she met through an online dating application. What is it? Friends located the profile for Audrey and provided it to police. Police investigators discovered that Audrey was actually Boswell, and they eventually learned that Boswell and Aubrey Trail lived together in a basement apartment in Wilbur, Nebraska. So, on the afternoon of November 14th, 2017, Loof texted Boswell her apartment address in preparation for their first date that evening. Within minutes, Boswell phoned to a hotel close to Loof's apartment, after which Boswell and Trail traveled to and checked into that hotel. At 5:35 p.m., Boswell left the hotel without Trail and drove to Loof's apartment. Boswell picked up Loof and they drove around Lincoln for almost 2 hours. Boswell returned Loof to her apartment at approximately 7:15 p.m. That's not much of a date. And Loof remained there until she left for work the following morning. Boswell phoned Trail at 7:22 p.m. and then returned to the hotel where she and Trail had spent the night. Boswell and Loof planned a second date for the evening of November 15th, 2017, the very next night. On the morning of November 15th, Boswell and Trail traveled to the vicinity of Loof's apartment and then followed her the same route that Loof took to her job, essentially following her. Shortly after Loof began her work shift, Trail was observed on the hardware store's security camera watching Loof. So Aubrey, the 50-year-old, Aubrey is 50, by the way.
Okay.
Aubrey's 50. I believe Boswell at the time was only like 20.
Okay.
I mean, it's creepy, but there's nothing wrong with it. It is legal. She's 23. Bailey was 23 and Aubrey was 50. It's creepy,
I'm not saying
but
there's anything wrong with it. If that makes them happy, that makes them happy.
yes.
But knowing the outcome, that's like the creepy part.
Yes. Well, especially because they have him on security camera watching her. You know, and I don't know. I know I'm not a female, so I don't. Needless to say, I don't have people creepily watching me. But every female that I do know, especially from the haunt or from anywhere I've worked, if they feel creeped out by someone, they'll usually come up to me or another male and go, "Hey, that dude's creeping me out a little bit. Would you mind if I just go hide somewhere until he leaves, or, you know, would you mind staying beside me or something like that?"
And you guys will help and be there and berate them if needed to get his butt to leave.
Slap him around, you know, whatever we got to do, you know.
Yeah.
I'm more of the I prefer the hands-on approach personally.
Yeah, you guys are great men to have around.
But let's put some pictures up real quick. See if I can find some pictures real quick of. Because Sydney Loop was actually a very attractive woman. Can I use that? Maybe. Let's see. We'll add this on here real quick. Nope. Guess I can't. So I can find a different picture of her. Basically, this was like covered all over. There we go. Here's one. I should be able to use this one. Like, this was covered on the news and everything pretty extensively. But that's Sydney Loof there. This is the young lady that was killed.
I know why I didn't notice. It had nothing to do with Minnie Mouse or Daisy Duck.
Okay.
My little girls were really small, so we did like school things, or the kids were over to play, or we watched videos, and they were obsessed with Daisy Duck or Minnie Mouse, depending on which kid, with how young they were at that point.
Okay, so this was Bailey Boswell here. That's the one who went on the date with her.
Okay.
Needless to say, it's not going to be the most flattering picture of her because she is coming from prison and they don't really have makeup or stuff like that.
She's still pretty, but
she's not. Yeah, she's still attractive. She is still somewhat attractive. I will give her that. And finally, Mr. Trail, Mr. Aubrey Trail. So if you looked like this, very attractive blonde, needless to say, the blonde is a lot of men, that is their type. And you have this dude looking at you, like just staring at you. Personally, I think I would notice.
Yeah, I would notice too.
I'm not blaming her by any means, but I just, ladies, be a little more attentive of your surroundings. So Trail was observed on the hardware store's security camera watching Sydney, after which Trail phoned Boswell, who was waiting in the store parking lot. Throughout the day, Boswell and Trail went to multiple stores in Lincoln and Wilbur and purchased items including plastic drop cloths, a hacksaw blades, tin snips, drywall blades, a utility knife, rope, chemical drain cleaner, bleach, plastic trash bags, like 30-gallon trash bags, duct tape, and roasting pan. 4 roasting pans, because we're going to commit murder and cook turkey dinner, apparently. Shortly before 7 p.m. on November 15th, 2017, Boswell arrived at Loop's apartment, and the two traveled together to Boswell's apartment in Wilbur. So Sydney and Bailey are traveling to Bailey's apartment in Wilbur.
Uh-oh, hold on. My headphones came off.
That is some weird things to have picked up all at
There we go.
once.
Yeah, sorry about that. My headphones came unplugged. At approximately 8:08 p.m., Boswell and Loof arrived at the apartment. The last time Sydney's cell phone communicated with any cell tower was at 8:32 p.m. The following morning, on November 16th, 2017, Boswell purchased more bleach, plastic trash bags, and chemical drain cleaner in Wilbur. Police telephoned Boswell on November 17th, and she admitted going on a date with Sydney on November 15th, but insisted she had dropped her off at a friend's house in Lincoln after the date. On November 18th, 2017, police conducted a welfare check at the Wilbur apartment shared by Boswell and Trail. No one was in the basement apartment, but police noticed a strong smell of bleach. The upstairs residents reported that an overwhelming bleach smell began on the night of November 15th, which would have been the last time that, Sydney was seen alive. Using cell site location data and mapping software, investigators were able to determine that on the afternoon of November 16th, 2017, the cell phones associated with Boswell and Trail traveled the same route along county roads west of Wilbur for approximately 3 hours that afternoon. Those cell phones were either stationary or slowly moving along that route. In December of 2017, investigators searched the county roads and ditches along the route where Boswell's and Trail's cell phones had traveled on November 16th. They discovered a partially torn plastic trash bag that contained severed human body parts, including a severed arm with a distinct tattoo that matched a known tattoo of Sydney Loof. In subsequent searches of ditches and fields in the area, investigators discovered additional disposal sites, and eventually they recovered a total of 13 body segments. All of the recovered body segments were found in or near plastic trash bags, and several of the bags were torn or ripped open when discovered. All of the body segments were photographed as they were discovered, and a total of 87 photographs were taken documenting the recovery process, and some of those photographs were admitted into evidence at trial over Boswell's objection. So in all, 17 different disposal sites were discovered by investigators. Additional items of evidence were recovered near the body segments, including plastic tarps with what appeared to be blood and bodily fluids, pieces of a sauna suit with the crotch cut out. I have no idea what the hell a sauna suit is. A sex toy, latex gloves, a flat bed sheet, star-patterned pajama pants, an extension cord, a large green shirt with apparent bleach stains on it, torn pieces of denim clothing, a towel, cut up pieces of Sidney Luke's driver's license and credit card, broken pieces of Sidney's cell phone, Sidney's jacket, bra, and shirt, and Sidney's car keys. When investigators searched the Wilbur apartment shared by Boswell and Trail, they recovered several bottles of bleach, a second sauna suit, duct tape, a human anatomy book, a fitted bed sheet like the flat bed sheet found at one of the disposal sites, and 2 roasting pans. No blood evidence was discovered in the apartment. DNA tests were performed on several items of evidence collected from the various disposal sites. Results showed that Loof was included as a contributor of the DNA from blood found on one of the latex gloves, blood found on the towel, and blood found on torn pieces of denim clothing. Sidney could not be excluded as a possible contributor of DNA found on the other latex glove and on the star-patterned pajama pants. Trail was included as a possible contributor of DNA found on the extension cord, and both Aubrey and Bailey were possible contributors to DNA found on the large green shirt. After Boswell's arrest, a search of data stored on her cell phone revealed a photograph of Boswell wearing similar star-patterned pajama pants. Any thoughts so far?
They not only did the murder, while one of them was doing so, the other one pleasured themselves. And they also had sauna time in weird sweatsuits, by the looks of what I found on the internet. They enjoyed it?
Well, there's going to be something here in a minute that will explain a little bit of what the thought could have been, or what their intentions could have been, and it's very possible that the murder was an accident. But the recovered human body segments were positively identified as belonging to Sidney Loof, and an autopsy was performed. The forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy testified that Sidney's body had been dismembered into 14 segments, 13 of which were recovered and examined. They were never able to find part of her arm. Most of the internal organs in Sidney's torso and abdomen were missing. The recovered body segments included Sidney's head and upper neck, her lower neck and upper torso, a mid-torso donut segment of skin and soft tissue, with some ribs and bone in the region of her belly button, her lower torso area including her pelvis and hip joints, segments of her right and left thighs, her right and left lower legs from the calves to around the knees, her right and left forearms and hands, her upper right arm, and her upper left and right ankles and feet. All right. So basically, they were charged with soliciting young females through social networking sites. Okay, there was more. Hold on. Because there's 3 women who have something to do with this. They don't name the women in the lawsuit or the trial. But In the fall of 2020, the charges against Boswell were tried to a jury over the course of several weeks, and the state called more than 40 witnesses and offered hundreds of exhibits in its case in chief, presenting much of the same evidence that had been admitted during the guilt phase of Trail's case in 2019. So, in addition to the evidence already summarized above, the state offered the testimony of 3 young women, only known as AH, AG, and KB, to prove both the first-degree murder charge and the conspiracy charge. Relevant details of their testimony will be set out later in the opinion, but that's what the judge wrote. The state's theory was that Boswell and Trail formed a conspiracy to murder someone for sexual gratification, and that Sidney's murder was the result of that conspiracy. Central to the state's theory was evidence that in the summer and fall of 2017, Bailey and Audrey used a dating app to solicit and recruit several young women, including AH, AG, and KB, into dominant, submissive sexual relationships that included grooming the women through physical and sexual punishment and regular discussions of witchcraft and the occult, to plan and participate in the torture and murder for sexual gratification. So, essentially, this is where it's going to get a little weird. Because all of that comes from Bailey's, the opinion of the judge from Bailey's trial. So, the entire time, Aubrey Trail is confessing to the entire murder, and he's saying that Bailey has nothing to do with it. That's what he's telling the investigators. He made several, sometimes contradictory confessions. Initially, he confessed from jail that he killed Sidney, referencing the law of retaliation, aka eye for an eye. Trail proclaimed his wish to be executed for Sidney, and he wanted to be, executed for Sidney's killing. In another confession, he alleged that Sidney died following a third date with Boswell on November 16th. So almost that Sidney spent the night, and her and Bailey went on another date the next day. In yet a third confession, he claimed that the trio was basically to participate in a sexual fantasy where he would be with 2 women and that he would choke Sidney, but that Sidney accidentally died as a result. So are we keeping track?
Yes, we're keeping track.
Of 3 different confessions. Number 1, Aubrey saying that I killed Sidney Loof. Number 2 was that Sidney and Bailey went on a third date, basically, on the 16th, and that she was alive until then. And finally, number 3 is that he was having a threesome with the women, and part of the threesome was for him to choke Sidney, and unfortunately, he took it too far and killed her. So how about a 4th confession? So in his 4th confession, go ahead.
I just said, okay.
Yes, we're now on confession number 4. So he's to be taken seriously. But in his 4th confession, he recanted some of his previous confessions, claiming there was no such thing as sexual fantasy or threesomes, but maintained that he accidentally choked Sidney Loof to death. At some point, Aubrey told the FBI that his job was to make movies for special kinds of kinks. He was paid by people who wanted to see the movies, and he used their money to pay subjects such as Sidney, knowing full well that a choking kink can lead to death. However, some of Trail's confessions seemed credible to authorities, such as when he tipped them about the location where he threw Sidney's smartphone, leading the police to Wilbur's Czech Cemetery, where indeed they found her phone, driver's license, and credit card. So, 4 confessions, do we believe any of them?
I can't say that I do.
I mean, they're plausible. That's the thing. Are they likely? No. I mean, come on. You mean to tell me this guy's getting a threesome with
No.
two very young women? I can see him being paid to do like sexual fantasy snuff films or something like that, and it went too far. I don't believe for a second that he's the only one involved in Sidney Luke's murder. But I think he has a much bigger part in it than Bailey does. But I could see it being the result, because technically those videos that he's talking about, the choking kink fantasy, they're technically illegal to make.
Yes.
Because of the danger. Like, there's a guy in professional wrestling, there's a guy who runs XPW named Rob Black, who went to jail because he was making violent pornography like that. And a lot of people will go to jail for that, because that type of pornography is illegal for good reason. So during the trial, Judge Johnson presided over the trial that took place in Wilbur, Nebraska on June 11th, 2018. Boswell and Trail were charged with murder in the first degree and improper disposal of human remains. A day later, the duo made their first court appearance. In July and August, prosecutors expressed their plans to seek capital punishment for both Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail, both of whom pled not guilty. The prosecution added conspiracy to commit murder to the list of charges pressed against the two. And in 2019, Aubrey Trail pled guilty to one of the charges, namely improper disposal of Sidney's remains. At the end of June, a frustrated Trail lashed out at the court and the jury, proclaiming Bailey's innocence and cursing everyone before cutting his neck with what appeared to be a razor blade. Though his wounds were not significant, Trail missed a portion of the trial following his injury due to his refusal to appear. So he couldn't even kill himself correctly.
Yeah.
The trial proceeded after Trail's injury, and the prosecution presented evidence against Boswell and Trail. Clerks from Falls City's Grand Weaver Hotel stated that they witnessed a woman that could have been Sidney with Boswell and Trail at the hotel weeks before Sidney's disappearance. Surveillance cameras recorded Boswell and Trail checking in at a Best Western hotel in Lincoln, near the Menards where Sidney was employed, on November 14th at 4 p.m. On November 15th at 11:30 a.m., they shopped at Aardvark Antique Mall, buying a folding saw, a weeder, and food grinders. Shortly after, cell tower data for both suspects' phones show they were waiting near Luke's residence before her departure to work, and they appear to have followed her to Menards. There, in that day's CCTV recordings, Trail is seen entering at noon right before Luke exits the store, with Trail looking over his shoulder at her. At Menards, Trail purchased an air freshener, cotton cord, Drano, protein bars, a thermometer, and lighters. While Sidney was at work, Home Depot surveillance tapes show the duo buying a foot-long hacksaw, wire snips, drop cloths, and a sharp utility knife with backup blades. Needless to say, we already talked about, the bleach. They bought some bleach in hefty plastic bags from a Dollar General a few hours before the second date, and from a grocery store in Wilbur the day after. Staff at both stores testified at the trial. A manager at the Dollar General confirmed that the barcodes for the bleach and plastic bags found near Loop's remains matched the ones in Boswell and Trail's receipts. I don't know why you need a manager for that, but okay. The manager also presented a receipt dated November 16th, 2017, showing Bailey Boswell buying a couple of bottles of Drano. At the grocery store, Boswell purchased additional bleach, plastic trash bags, and a trash bin. After these purchases, data from cell towers showed the pair's phones traveling to and from the area where Loop's body remains were found. The cutting tools, especially the hacksaw, were never found. However, they had many items they could analyze, such as handcuffs, rope, dog collar and leash, and sex toys. Loop's DNA could not be found anywhere on these items. Pieces of electric wire were found scattered near Loop's remains, which Trail admitted to he used to strangle her. However, the FBI found Sydney's blood on some apparel, the rubber glove and the pant, the sauna suit. Authorities, or I guess the pajama pants. Authorities could not identify who wore the gloves or pants, although there was a limited support for Audrey Trail's DNA on the surface of the electrical wire. In 2019, 3 women took the stand to allege Boswell and Trail had desires to record victims as they tortured and killed them before profiting millions from the sales of these videos. In one of his confessions, of course, Audrey claimed that he recorded Sydney consenting to be choked, although the tape was never found. And Trail claimed to have recorded her death. Never claimed to have recorded her death. Trail went on to recant the claim that he recorded Sydney giving consent to being strangled. Later that month, the FBI revealed that while the pair were housed at the Saline County Jail, Trail transmitted letters, some ciphers, to Boswell, informing her of what story to tell the court. The codes were deciphered because, it's the FBI. And these letters had Aubrey taken full responsibility for the murder and painting Boswell as a forced participant in the crime. Also written in the letters were Trail's plans to make money by making snuff sex films, alleging that he lied about the original intention for no one to get hurt in the process. Which is it starts to make sense that they're trying to make snuff films,
Yes.
So, needless to say, Bailey and Aubrey, their lawyers were public defenders. And after Aubrey confessed to strangling Sydney, the defense rested its case on presenting the couple's actions as kinks gone wrong. The defense painted Aubrey as a person with an impoverished and troubled childhood, someone who was assisting the police in bringing justice to Sydney's family. And Aubrey's attorney also tried poking holes in the prosecution's case, painting Sydney as a depressed person who used cocaine and citing memes depicting choking and rough sex in her iCloud accounts as evidence that Loop sought such sexual fantasies. I'm pretty sure if she did have any kind of choking kink, it wasn't to be choked to death.
Yeah.
Similarly, Bailey's attorney emphasized Boswell's traumatic childhood and accentuated her role in Loop's murder as forced after being emotionally manipulated by Trail, who was double her age. Now Bailey could have had some daddy issues because she did watch her daddy get. I guess her father died when she was very young. Yeah. She was an infant when her biological father was murdered. So very well, could explain why she's dating a 50-year-old or something like that,
I have daddy issues too. I saw my father die and various other things that we're not going to say here. But
yes. It
That
didn't make you
doesn't
want to.
mean I have a murder kink.
Oh, come on. Why not?
I have a death obsession, but my goal is not to kill people. I do things like talk about death and go to haunts.
Yes. So you're telling me watching your dad die or get killed as a child, I'm assuming, right? Didn't
Yeah,
make you want to go out and murder somebody?
I watched my dad die. I watched my grandmother die, and I watched my mom die.
Well, that's really.
I
am
If
sorry.
I had thought about killing anybody,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been given. If they come through the door, I have thought about if they force the door in and I told them to leave, then I'd have the right to, like,
You're talking about self-defense.
make my children safe from these
Yes.
crazy people. Defend them.
Self-defense, yes.
I cannot think of the word defend for a second. I would have to defend them. But
Yes.
otherwise, I don't have the goal of killing people.
So it took the jury less than 3 hours to reach the decision to basically convict Aubrey Trail with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human skeletal remains. Aubrey sought a new trial, which you fucking confessed. You confessed. So, needless to say, the request was he was told to fuck off by Judge Vicky Johnson.
Sounds good to me.
Or the I guess the proper professional way of saying is it was rejected. Bailey Boswell fared better with her request to change venue, which was granted due to prejudice. In February of 2020, District Judge Julie Smith recused herself as she was instrumental in the recent implementation of Nebraska's execution protocol. In October of 2020, a jury convicted Boswell of murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains. In June of 2021, the three-judge panel unanimously agreed to sentence Aubrey Trail to death. Appealing the sentence, Trail sought to represent himself. That is never a good idea. Ever.
No.
Needless to say, the request was denied. Boswell, meanwhile, was sentenced to life in prison after one of the three judges opined that Boswell's actions did not meet the standard of exceptional depravity needed for imposing capital punishment. In an unrelated case, Boswell and Trail were sentenced for defrauding hundreds of thousands of dollars from interstate coin buyers. Aubrey Trail already had a criminal background involving forged checks. Bailey Boswell is now an inmate at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women in York, and Aubrey Trail is on death row at the Tecumseh State Correctional Institute in Tecumseh. Final thoughts on that one?
Well, I don't believe it was a mistake with all the things added. And with all of it, when you think about it all and the toys found and so on, they enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yes. Well, like I said, I do believe that it had to do with making those tapes. I think that had a lot to do with it. I don't necessarily think it was an accident. I think he 100% intended, at least Aubrey. I think Aubrey 100% intended to kill Sidney Loof. I don't want to say that Bailey was in on that part. It is very possible that and it just happened and Bailey participated after it happened. But I don't know if Bailey was involved in that part. I also don't know if Sidney agreed to any of this. It's very possible that Sydney Loop, because they can't, without finding any of her internal organs, or I guess being able to do a proper autopsy, they can't really prove whether Sydney was sexually assaulted or whether or not it was agreed upon. I don't, for one, think it was agreed upon. I think Aubrey Trail is a horrible person. I think Bailey Boswell. I can see. I mean, I can see it. Like I said, I can see it. It is very plausible that Aubrey Trail was a very manipulative, evil. We know he's evil. We know he's manipulative. All that good stuff. He very well could have manipulated Bailey into participating in whatever debauchery he had going.
Yes.
It's very, very possible, very believable that certain people will pay. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When it comes to porn and depravity or any of that kind of stuff you want to call it, there's a market for everything.
Yes.
There's a market for everything. There's a reason. There's a rule. I think it's Rule 42. Anything can become porn. Anything. And there are people out there that, will pay to watch people get choked. Now, I'm pretty sure there's some really good actresses out there that can be quote unquote choked and pretend to die or pretend to be choked unconscious. But he decided the real thing was more important, or was more believable. So that's my thoughts on it. Honestly, I can see 100%. I can see it. I'm not going to say yes or no to it because there's no way for any of us to know. But so that is the Tinder murders from Nebraska. As I said, there are so many Tinder murders that came up. Like, apparently this was a regular thing.
Insane.
Like, it's a regular thing that this happens quite a bit on Tinder. So please be careful.
Craigslist, Tinder, any app where you go meet random strangers.
Yes.
For anything, whether it be to pick up a TV stand or for a date. Please be careful.
Yes. See, I sell stuff on Facebook. I have 500 items listed on Facebook Marketplace. It is something I've been doing for years, where I am a reseller. I know everybody hates resellers. I'm a reseller. I'll buy stuff from like a Goodwill or a yard sale or an Amazon return bin and then turn around and sell it for a profit. My meetup spot right now is the dungeon, because I know there's always somebody at the dungeon. And if I feel uncomfortable, you can ask Raz about this. I've already called Raz a couple of times. If I go to meet somebody and it seems a little sketchy, I will message Raz, or I'll call Raz and go, hey, could you come upstairs real quick and, hang out with me for a few minutes while I make this sale? This way I have backup.
And that makes perfect sense, because my dad was a truck driver. He'd get stuff from all over the country in random places. And then we'd have flea market days when he was off. But it was always at the same place, at the Saudi Daisy Flea Market. Well, the same area. Yes. We'd get there early enough to get the same spot, which kind of sucked because 4:30 wake-up calls suck.
We do have a flea market here. Most of our flea markets, like if I go sell at Trader's World or Treasure Isles, I don't go to Treasure Isles, but if I go to sell at Trader's World, you got to be down there by 9 a.m., which is fine. You pack the truck up the night before, head down there. We have one here in Dayton at the Dixie Drive-In. It's called the Paris Flea Market, and they open at 6:30. At like 6:30 in the morning, and yeah, needless to say, you got to be there by 4:30 so you can start setting up. So I get that one. But yeah, I make sure that there's, I'm from what would be considered the ghetto, I guess. It was a very bad. I grew up in a very bad neighborhood. I've watched people get stabbed. I've seen people get shot. I've seen people get jumped because they only had $5 in their wallet when they got robbed. Like, I've seen drive-by shootings. I've seen all this stuff. So I feel like I kind of have the knowledge, or at least the wherewithal to know when something doesn't seem right. And I always make sure I have backup. So
That makes perfect sense.
I appreciate it. So we're gonna move on to a couple to another pair. They are serial killers. They are a lesbian couple. They're called the Lethal Lovers, Gwendolyn Graham and Catherine Wood. Have you ever heard of these two?
No.
They might make you a little angry. So
Okay.
They were convicted of killing 5 elderly women in Walker, Michigan, which is a suburbs of Grand Rapids, in 1987. And they committed their crimes in the Alpine Manor nursing home, where they both worked as nurses' aides. So the two women met at the Alpine Manor nursing home shortly after Graham had moved to Michigan from Texas. They quickly became friends and then lovers in 1986. 2 years later, they were both facing murder charges for allegedly smothering 5 elderly patients as part of a love bond. The details of the murders came almost entirely from accounts to criminal justice authorities by Catherine Wood, whose murder charges were reduced by a plea agreement so she could testify against Graham in Graham's trial for first-degree murder. However, Wood's accounts and her self-portrayal as Graham's pawn were later brought into serious question by award-winning journalist Lowell Caulfield in his 1992 true crime book, Forever in 5 Days. So according to Wood's account, in January of 1987, Gwendolyn Graham entered the room of a woman who had Alzheimer's disease. Well, let me go to this other, because this one gives a better detail. I've also got an article from Oxygen.com that has a better detailing of the first one. So in July of 1985, the family of Marguerite Chambers admitted the 58-year-old Alzheimer's patient to the Alpine Manor nursing home in Walker, Michigan. Although it was a difficult decision for her loved ones, they believed the facility would help Chambers through her final years. I'm lucky enough that I've never had to put a parent or my grandparent or anyone into a nursing home. My grandfather had hospice when he passed away, but he got to stay at home and the hospice nurse came to him. When my mother passed away in 2023, she actually passed away in the hospital, and it was like all of a sudden. So I can't imagine how hard it is to put a family member into a nursing home, especially one with Alzheimer's who probably won't remember you the next time they see you.
I'm a third generation CNA, so I know how hard it is to deal with somebody with Alzheimer's in your home and in the nursing home facility. And I am angry at these two because why?
Well, we're gonna find that out here shortly. I felt safe that she was going to be taken care of, her daughter Jan Hunderman said. They soon realized, however, that some of her caretakers were far from nurturing. While visiting her mother one day, Hunderman noticed that there was dirt on her face, and she wet a washcloth to clean her. Her mother became her Chambers became extremely agitated. Her arms started going, her eyes got big as saucers, and I knew she was scared. She was afraid of something. Something had happened, Hunderman said. When she asked the nursing home staff why her mother was so upset, Hunderman said she didn't really get any answers, but they assured her Chambers would be kept clean. Less than 2 years after she entered the facility, Chambers passed away in January of 1987, but it was not until the fall of 1988 that her family would learn what had caused her death. On October 7th, 1988, Ken Wood entered the Walker Police Department to report that his ex-wife Kathy Wood, a nurse's aide at Alpine Manor, had come to his home and told him that she had been involved in a series of homicides with one of her co-workers. My initial reaction was, who would kill a disabled person? Basically, we didn't believe it. Retired Walker Police Department Detective Roger Kalianak said, following up on Ken's statement, detectives spoke to the administrator of the nursing home, who reported nothing unusual occurring at the facility and said that Kathy was an excellent employee. Okay, the second somebody at the facility says, no, it's fine, nothing's wrong, and you know there's something wrong, get them out of there.
As a CNA and currently with a family member in a nursing home, if you think there's a problem, go to the DON or administrator. I guarantee you something's going to be looked at, because in our nursing home, my mother-in-law is a nurse and the family member of the person in there. She went to the head nurse and said, I am the family member right now. We need to talk about this. And they found out what the problem was and they fixed it. So please, I don't care. Go ask.
Yeah, always ask. And if they sit there and go, "Were you accusing me of something?" Yes, I am. I am definitely accusing you of something, because something is not right here.
Please do.
But because apparently the detectives did speak to the administrator, the daughter spoke to the administrator, and they're like, "No, it's fine." And if you know something's wrong, keep digging. So at the station, investigators confronted her with Ken's statements, and while she initially said it was a joke, she later claimed that her coworker and lover, Gwendolyn Graham, had suffocated multiple patients at the nursing home. According to Kathy, after Graham killed somebody, they would come back to the house and have sex. Kathy thought it was a release for Gwen. Why would they do that? Just as inconceivable, Kalianak said. Kathy also confessed that Graham had suffocated Chambers with a washcloth on 2 occasions, the latter of which resulted in her death. She says Gwen had told her that she used a washcloth to place it underneath the chin and hold it up and pinch her nose. She thought she had suffocated her. Within an hour or so, Gwen found out Marguerite was still breathing. Kathy said a few days later, Gwen Graham went back, placed a washcloth on Marguerite Chambers' mouth, and killed her. She told detectives that a few months earlier, she and Graham had broken up, and that Graham had moved to Tyler, Texas with her new girlfriend, Heather Beauregard. Without evidence to obtain an arrest warrant, detectives were forced to let Kathy go while they continued an investigation into her claims. The next morning, they contacted Alpine Manor to speak with other employees who were close with Kathy and found out that she had since been discharged from her duties. Her co-workers shared that Kathy and Graham had an intense, volatile relationship, and that they would play odd pranks together, such as lying under patients' bed and grabbing nurses' aides by their ankle as they walked by. Employees also revealed that the two were often jealous of each other and that Graham was particularly possessive. Kathy Wood had a love-hate relationship with Gwendolyn Graham. At one point, they got into a fight, and Gwen Graham dragged Kathy Wood into the bedroom by her hair. It was hard to believe that these things were happening, and it got to be a real toxic mess, Kellyanne said. Walker detectives then flew to Texas to interview Graham about the allegations. She claimed that Kathy was merely making up the rumors to break up her and Beauregard. While she agreed to take a polygraph examination, the test was inconclusive and authorities had to release her from questioning. Back in Michigan, Kathy agreed to take a polygraph of her own, and when questioned about the murders, she distanced herself from the crimes, telling the examiner she only played the lookout when Graham killed the patients. Kathy failed the test, and she offered no explanation of the results. While former Detective Freeman believed she had failed because she had downplayed her role in the murders, other investigators were skeptical that there was any truth to her claims. Days later, however, Kathy called detectives and said she wanted to tell the truth about what really happened. Sitting down in an interview room, Kathy revealed she played a much bigger part in the murders than she had previously claimed. "Why should I blame her for this when I had a lot to do with it too?" she said in a recording obtained by License to Kill. Kathy admitted they plotted at least 5 murders together, and they selected their victims based on the first letters of their names in order to spell out the word murder. Starting with Chambers, whose killing Kathy said she remembered most vividly. What kind of Scooby-Doo bullshit is this?
I can't tell you.
That
It's like, what the heck?
So they didn't even get all the way through the word. They only get 5 murders. They only got to M-U-R-D-E. So either they couldn't find an R, or they broke up before they could find the R.
Yeah.
Questioned about their motive. I'm sorry. There's a book they keep in the nursing home with all the names on as they die or are discharged to a hospital, and we were going to try and make it spell murder. What a... So it's like a preteen prank to write a bunch of names out and make all the first letters of each word spell out boobs. Except this one is 2 grown women trying to make the death manual spell murder. What kind of childhood bullshit is that?
I don't have an answer for you because this one's a disgrace to our entire industry.
If I get killed because my name, the first letter of my name is U, so you could spell murder in a book, I'm coming back from the grave and I'm kicking your ass. Because I died because the first letter of my name is U?
Yeah.
Questioned about their motive for the slayings, Kathy said they did it so they would have something that would bind them together forever. "Oh God, it's silly, but that's what it was," she told investigators. What kind of sociopath? So basically, you have 2 nurses. 2 nurses, are they nurses' aides? I couldn't remember if they were nurses or nurses' aides. Nurses' aides here, who essentially are playing childish games with people's lives. and laugh about it as if it's not that big of a deal.
Dude, okay, Chaos and I are both CNAs. We worked in a nursing home together. That is not anything like we did. The worst thing we did was come grab the other person off another hall because we needed help adjusting a person in their bed, getting them transferred to another place. Whatever would make it easier on the patient, we helped make that happen together. But it never occurred to us to kill them or harm them in any way. Harming is not anything on our list.
So it's never occurred to you or never came across your mind that, hey, if we kill 6 people here, we can spell the word murder in the death book.
No.
That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And I listen to a lot of podcasts on serial killing and stuff, on serial killers and stuff like that. And there's some really stupid shit out there. But this is the dumbest fucking thing.
Dude,
like
seriously.
I'm stuck on the book. Like the whole go ahead.
Odd thing is, I know a DON that would have noticed because she does the same thing we're doing. She looks at serial killers and other murders. She also does the cryptid thing and all that. That is why I sent her that picture you have as your face right now. She would notice and ask, "What the hell?"
Yeah, it like I would not necessarily understand, but it fits the mold that if Gwendolyn goes and suffocates Muriel, I believe that was the woman's name, or Marguerite was the first victim's name. She goes, she suffocates Marguerite. Her and Kathy go back to the house and do what women do, right? Do what lesbian lovers do. That makes sense because that's a lot of serial killers will do that. They do, there are serial killers out there that get a sexual gratification or some kind of sexual pleasure from the kill. But to go and kill because you want to spell murder in a fucking book. And like you said, you would think after MURDE, if at some point the person looking at the book would go, wait a minute. But then you'd have to sit there and try to explain what you think's happening, and people going, all right, it's totally not a coincidence. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm stuck on the book.
Dude, that's evidence. And then you have people like my favorite DON that would notice because, again, she's like us and be like, what is happening? Who's on the hall?
Well, and like I said, it was just trying to explain that to somebody is like, for some reason, our last 5 deaths in the facility spell MURDE. Like one, do we have a Rachel? We don't have a Rachel, do we? Like
I'm Roberto, but that's beside the point. What the heck?
Yeah, like it's just I'm gonna be stuck on that one. And then her response is, "Oh God, it's silly, but that's what it was. That's stupid." So before an arrest could be made, prosecutors required investigators to present corroborating physical evidence, and in 1988, authorities exhumed the remains of Chambers and another victim, Edith Cook. Although the forensic pathologist was unable to determine if the victims had died from natural causes or suffocation, he was able to alter their causes of death from natural to homicide based on Kathy's statements. Shortly after, both Kathy and Graham were arrested. Kathy was charged with 2 counts of open murder, and Graham was charged with 5 counts of murder. In exchange for a plea deal, Kathy agreed to testify against Graham. Berringer was also called to the stand, and she testified to the same telling of events that Kathy had shared with investigators. Gwendolyn Graham was ultimately found guilty of 5 counts of murder, first-degree murder, and 1 count of conspiracy to murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison. For one count of second-degree murder and one count of conspiracy to murder, Kathy was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. And do you want to know the scary part?
What is the scary part?
In January of 2020, she was released from prison on good behavior and moved to South Carolina.
Well, she's no longer close to where I live, so we're good.
Kathy was never in Texas. Gwendolyn was.
Okay, one of them was close to where I was. I get it mixed up.
Yes. Gwendolyn moved to Tyler, Texas with her new girlfriend. So, yeah. I'm still stuck on the book. All right, but guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here because we've been going for about 2.5 hours. And if we keep going, we'll be here all night, in all honesty. There are so many more cases out there. Fred and Rosemary West. The Atlanta Lovers Lane murders. The Barbie killer. I planned on doing the Barbie killers, but the story of Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo is such a weird, crazy-ass story that I think that would need its own episode, in all honesty.
Great. There's going to be a part 2. I look forward to it.
There possibly will be, because let's put it this way. Do you know anything about the Barbie killers? The Ken and Barbie killers?
Not a clue.
One of their first victims was Carla Homolka's younger sister, who Paul Bernardo was molesting while Carla watched.
Dude, actually, I do think I remember something about this.
Yeah, their story's crazy. Like I said, you have Fred and Rosemary West. The Lonely Hearts Killers, those are actually big ones. Faye and Ray Copeland, Sarah and John Macon, aka the Baby Farmers, the Sunset Strip Killers. I mean, there's so many serial killing couples out there. Like I said, if we kept going, even if I do one more, we'll be here till like 1:00 in the morning. And I do have to get up to put the kid on the bus. Plus, I have a haunt to prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we'll make a part 2. Go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry for interrupting.
It's probably nearly midnight there anyway.
About 20 minutes till. It's 1:45 actually. Plus, I haven't seen my wife all day. I'd like to go back and say at least hi to her before she goes to sleep.
Yeah. Getting wife hugs are always a good idea.
Yeah. Well, she worked like 14 hours today. She's her employee. She's a manager of a Subway at a truck stop, and her employees kind of. I don't want to say her current employees suck, but she's having a hard time finding employees to work. Let's put it that way.
Been there, done that.
Like a lot of people, unfortunately, do the no call, no show thing, and when you've only worked at a job for a couple of weeks, that's kind of stupid to do. So
very much so.
Yeah. But I do hope everybody enjoyed this episode of Shivers and our first foray into the true crime. But Jen, where can they find you at?
Oh, you can find me anywhere. Faycore, Owlite, Friday with the Library, and the Blue Box. And if you want to read anything I've written, there's Jennifer Elliott, author page.
And of course on the Owlite Network.
I thought I said the Owlite Network.
You might have. You might have. I was in and out for a little bit. I am getting a little tired too. I've been up since like 3:30 this morning.
Ooh.
So that's another reason
we're
yeah. So but you guys got Tomb of the Terrible, Uncle Necro's Tomb of the Terrible on Monday. What do you guys have on in store?
Tomorrow we have Corpse Garden Reads, and then dude, I keep forgetting. I don't know why. I keep forgetting the name of the movie. Give me a second, because it's one of those weird ones I've never actually heard of.
I say I didn't get a chance to listen to the episode this week to see what it landed on.
Hotel Dunsmuir. Hotel Dunsmuir.
Well, I've never heard of. That's weird. I will definitely have to look that up.
The link's in the group if you want to find it.
I will try to. I will take a look. But guys, you can find me everywhere at the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on X, on Facebook. We do have our own face. We have a Facebook group for all three shows. For Shivers, we have a Facebook group for the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast, and we have a Facebook group for Hardcore Heels. We also have Twitter pages for both the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast and for Hardcore Heels. The Hardcore Heels is pretty new, so it might take a little bit to find that one. You can also find me. You can find me on Twitch at Sewer Dweller 78. But again, I very rarely play games anymore. Trying to find the time to do it is just very hard right now. So, but you can also find me this weekend at Hell's Dungeon for Till Death Do Us Part, our Valentine's haunt, all weekend long, 8 to midnight. And of course, once again, Saturday night, we do have our murder mystery dinner. Come enjoy some Italian food and watch a murder mystery show. And then afterwards, come walk through the dungeon. Like I said, I'll be extra mean to you. If you mention Owl Lake Network, I'll be extra mean to you. How about that? But guys, coming up on the Bloody Binge, we have a lot of great movies coming up on the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast. Next Friday, we will be watching Sweatshop. It is a more recent horror movie. I believe it's a slasher movie. I've seen the trailer. It looks good. Haven't watched the movie yet. We'll definitely be watching that this weekend at some point. Then on the 28th, to celebrate Mardi Gras, we are watching Mardi Gras Massacre. And then for the following month, for March, we have on tap. We have for the March 7th. I've been saying March 1st a lot, but it's actually March 7th is the first Friday of March. We're going to be watching classic 80s cheesy, campy action movie American Ninja. This is a movie I grew up watching. I loved it. I used to love this movie as a kid. Starring Michael Dudikoff. We will also, the week after that, which would be the 14th, is our St. Patrick's Day episode. We are going to watch Full Moon's Unlucky Charms. On the 21st, the week after, there will be no show. There will be no show on the 21st. There will be no episode of Shivers next month. Because I will be at Horror Hound in Cincinnati. As I said, maybe try to film a couple of things down there. I tried to get a press pass, but I don't have enough followers on the Bloody Binge. So, but me and Raz have talked about it before. I've talked about it. Next time, maybe in the fall, we'll work together and get a couple of press passes and do a couple interviews with some celebrities and that. But on the 21st, again, there's no episode. On the 28th, it is spring break. So how about we watch Bikini Spring Break? It is a more recent movie. You're talking like 2011, 2012, because I watched this movie while I worked at Blockbuster. And it is exactly what you would expect Spring Break to be. A lot of topless women for no reason whatsoever. So that'll be fun. It does, but now in Now Defense though, it does star Robert Carradine from who is Lewis from The Revenge of the Nerds. I think he was one of the only ones. Him and Booger might be the only two, and Ogre. I think Ogre was in all of every single, which I believe there's 5 total Revenge of the Nerds movies. And Lewis would be one of the only ones who was in all 5. But Robert Carradine stars. Coming April, I'm still working on what I'm going to do for April, because the first week of April is our 1-year anniversary for the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast. So I kind of want to do something special, but I haven't decided what yet. I don't know if we'll do a live watch along or what we'll do yet. Not only that, during the month of April, we have Easter, but Easter and WrestleMania are on the same weekend. So what do we do? Do we do an Easter movie? Do we do a wrestling themed movie, or a movie with a wrestler in it to celebrate WrestleMania? Which is technically what our first episode was last year, was a wrestling themed movie, because it was the Friday before WrestleMania 40. So
Depends on the list of movies you find. I recommend finding a list of movies and choosing the one that seems most entertaining, either with a wrestler in it or wrestling themed.
Well, if I do the wrestling thing, I think I'm going to go with Raz's suggestion, which is No Holds Barred, starring Hulk Hogan and Zeus, or Tiny Lister, Debo from Friday.
He's a good actor.
He is. He's in a lot of my. The funny thing is, he's in a lot of my favorite movies, because Friday is one of my favorite comedy movies. And then one of my favorite movies of all time is The Fifth Element, and lo and behold, he plays the frickin' president in Fifth Element.
I love that.
I do. I love The Fifth Element. I'm a big Bruce Willis. I'm like, of all the actors, like, I grew up watching 80s and 90s action, action movies, horror, and all that good stuff. Huge fan. One of my favorite. I was always more of an Arnold Schwarzenegger kid than I was a Sylvester Stallone. Although growing up, I did love the Rocky movies. I did like Cobra and Tango and Cash and that. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Was never allowed to watch the Rambo movies.
Huh.
Yeah, I was never allowed to watch the Rambo movies, but I was allowed to watch Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I do love that movie. But the funny thing is, a lot of people don't realize Running Man is actually my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Dude, I love that movie too.
It is. Like, my girlfriend, I still remember one of my ex years ago. We were walking around. You're talking like mid 2000s. We were walking around Walmart, and we went to the $5 movie bin, because, again, I'm an avid movie collector. I would prefer physical copies to digital. That's how many copies of my movies that I have. And I found a triple. It was like a triple feature box of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies with Total Recall, Commando, and The Running Man. And I literally picked it up and went, "Ooh, Running Man," and threw it in the cart. And my girlfriend at the time was just like, "Wow, you really like that movie, huh?" A couple minutes later, as we're still standing there, I'm still going through the bin. A friend of ours walks up, who also worked at the Haunted Hayride with us. He was actually my first manager at the Haunted Hayride. And he walks up, he talks to us for a second. He goes to him and he goes, "Ooh, Running Man," and puts it in the cart. And my girlfriend at the time just looking, going, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna make you watch this movie now. We're going home to watch this movie."
Yeah, because honestly, great movie.
Yeah, Running Man is awesome. Still, but I was always like, Bruce Willis. I always there was really very few of Bruce Willis movies that I didn't like. Loved Die Hard. Didn't care for Die Hard 2, though. And in all honesty, I'll be the first to admit, too, Die Hard 3 is probably my favorite one of the Die Hard movies.
Us too.
The one Die Hard with a Vengeance. They kind of go downhill after that one, but no, I take it back. Die Hard, the fourth one with the computer, with Timothy Olyphant as the bad guy, as the villain, kind of was actually pretty good. The one with him with Bruce Willis and Justin Long with the computer hacking stuff. It was the one after that with the son in Russia that kind of fell flat. But I grew up, but I I digress. But we'll do some stuff. Well, I got some stuff I'm looking into because I want to do an Easter horror movie. So we might do an Easter horror movie the week before, or the week. See, that's the thing, because the week before would be. Let's see. Hold on. Let me bring my calendar up. Give me a second here. So the 4th. Yeah, there's only 4 weekends. Or 4 Fridays in April. So the 4th would be the 1-year anniversary. The 11th would probably end up being Shivers. The 18th would be either wrestling or Easter, because it is Easter and wrestling that weekend. And the 25th would be something. I don't know what I would do on the 25th yet. We might actually, looking at this, I might just do Shivers on the 25th of April.
Yeah.
And then do Easter on the 11th, and then wrestling on the 18th. Probably what we'll do. Because there's some good Easter horror movies out there as well.
Because if you decide to do a Thursday thing again, the 10th of April, I won't be able to do it. That is a very special day.
And what is that?
Opie Pie's birthday.
My son's birthday, my youngest, is on the 2nd of April.
Ooh.
My birthday is on the 14th of April. So a lot of April birthdays coming up.
The Tinder killings happened on my birthday.
Nice. Hey, look, the Tinder killings made way more sense than the last one we did with murder. Spelling murder in the death book. That's
very much so.
Dumbest fucking thing. So yeah, I'll work on it this weekend. A schedule for April. I also want to wait at least closer to April too, because more movies get added every month, of course, to Tubi and to other platforms. So like I want to hold out just a little bit, because like I said, there's a lot of Easter horror movies out there. There are some wrestling ones that I could watch too. You know, there's plenty of El Santo movies out there, and I will definitely watch more El Santo movies and do it for the show, because El Santo is one of my favorite guys to watch. Always put on cheesy movies. Always dubbed, which after watching God, after what was it? The Killer Karaoke. That was fun dubbing though. That was kind of silly.
Yes, it was.
But we'll get some stuff figured out. Like I said, my biggest thing is trying to figure out the 4th and trying to do something special for the 1-year anniversary.
I look forward to it.
I will say I think Thursdays, at least through WrestleMania, Thursdays are probably going to be reserved for wrestling.
Okay. Works for me.
Like I said, go at least till WrestleMania, then we might switch to an every other week format. But WrestleMania is, of course, the biggest show of the year. We'll keep Hardcore Heels going for that. So we have Hardcore Heels. And also on the next episode of Shivers, of course, we are going back to the cryptids, and we are going all the way down to the deep south in Mississippi. I haven't looked it much up yet, but it looks like there are a bunch of cryptids in Mississippi, which you would expect that because there's a lot of backwoods in Mississippi.
Well, yeah.
So we'll continue in April. We'll continue our journey through the country with their cryptids. I've got some other stuff planned for Shivers, some more hauntings. I might, depending on scheduling and time, I really want to get out and start filming some stuff for Shivers. Getting out and about in the local area, because we do have the Woodland Cemetery, which I haven't been to yet, where the Wright brothers are buried. We have the Patterson Homestead, which is said to be haunted. We have the Air Force Museum, which has a bunch of old aircraft in it. And some of the aircraft is said to be haunted. There's a lot of
That
stuff.
sounds amazing.
Mansfield isn't that far away. Waverly Hills isn't that far away. Like, one of the positive things of living in Dayton is Columbus, Lex. We're by a lot of old, very possibly haunted stuff. So I kind of want to get out and start filming stuff like that. Getting to some of these cryptid festivals that we have here in Ohio, like the Frogman Festival, and like the I think that's right, the Loveland Festival is the. I'd love to get down to go to the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant. That always seems like a great time. But we'll get some stuff. We got a lot of stuff coming up. Tune in Monday for Uncle Necro's Tomb of the Terrible. We got tomorrow night. You said it's Corpse Garden, right? Tomorrow night.
Yes.
Tune in to Friday and listen. What are you doing now? What do you do on Corpse Garden? Is that
that's to be announced? I usually let a monster help pick out the scary story.
Okay, so it's reading. So the Corpse Garden is the one where you read scary stories?
No, we're just doing Corpse Garden reads because I was not able to get the guests set up yet.
I
We're having schedule problems.
I can see that, especially this time of year. But guys, I hope I hope you enjoyed our episode tonight. If you guys enjoyed serial killers, send me an email, bloodybinge@gmail.com. We'll do more serial killer stuff. We'll do more true crime. Needless to say, there's plenty of it out there. And as usual, be good to each other and watch more horror movies.
And
we'll see you guys
more horror stories.
Yeah, especially from the Owlite authors. Help them out a little bit. Well, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.